Chapter 3, The Mummalump. As they left Chapter 2 behind them and travelled through the pages of Chapter 3, the setting sun spread fingers of red and pink across the sky, sending an eerie glow over the dark forest, which became bleaker and creepier the further they got from Here We Are. Dark trees stood twisted and broken, as though careless giants had trampled through them, and slithering things slithered or lay coiled in jagged stumps, and glowing eyes peered at them from twisted branches. One of the green glowworms, who Timmy had noticed buzzing around Amble's head, was sat in one of the leaves on Amble's winter branches, watching him closely. He shouted to the bug who was stood next to him.
"Aye, Mavis!"
Mavis looked up and raised her glowing eyebrows.
"Timmy Sprottle's here at last, but he don't look very happy,"
Mavis whispered back.
"That's 'cause he's starting to suspect that his adventure's crappy. Can't blame the little fella, Sid. Who wants to be an hero?"
Sid nodded his glowing green head.
"Not a good career choice. Survival rate of 0.
So Timmy was not expecting anything pleasant to happen any time soon, but the gnarled, splintered trees of the forest disappeared as suddenly as they had begun, and the cat stepped out into a sunlit golden meadow, which swayed in a light breeze, and a huge blue pond sparkled as steam rose and bubbles gurgled on the surface. The half-eared cat lifted her head and shouted, "Hold on, Timmy Sprottle!" She sprang into the water, and Timmy felt the slimy poo melt and disappear as they sank beneath the surface. Amble leapt into the water, sending a huge wave splashing over them, and Albert shouted, "In you go, my beauty!" as his spaceship splattered through the air and flopped down into the water. As though it was annoyed at being disturbed, waves began to ripple, and the bubbling pond disrupted into a stormy sea. A large purple creature who looked a bit like a walrus shot out from beneath the water, flipping his great tail in the air and looking around himself before he dived back down beneath the surface and disappeared. "That was the Mummalump," whispered the half-eared cat. "He's guardian to the water holes. As long as he is here, nothing evil may enter. The most secret waterhole is the Cackling Cave, which leads to the Cave of Heroes, and joins Here We Are to the world under the world where he comes from. They say he will guard the waters until 5 heroes, the children of kings, are found, and will travel with him to the world under the world and rule the kingdoms. The Mummalumps used to Albert crash landing here, covered in custard and rotten eggs."
"But I must say," shrieked Albert, "I have never been shot down by a poops before, and I will never be shot down by a poops again. We must blow this evil bully up with the gas of his own poo slime. We must make him sizzle, and his fat ears sozzle, and unravel his pesky socks and knit them into tea cozies."
It was already starting to go dark when the Mummalump reappeared. As he leapt out of the water, his tail became legs, and he walked over to the fire as a purple creature that was half man, half animal, although Timmy wasn't exactly sure what half of what sort of animal he might be. He reminded him of a great bull or a noble stallion, and wore a purple hooded cloak slung over his shoulders. He had been patrolling the waters between Here We Are and Far, Far Away, and taking a stick, he drew a large map in the sandy ground. He drew a big cross at the bubbling pond where they were, and Timmy was relieved to see he had drawn a thin dotted line to show a hidden path, which would take them safely through the Swamp of Doom and straight onto Evil Eddie's castle. Albert jumped to his feet.
We must leave immediately before this hidden path moves and hides itself somewhere else. The last time it hid itself, I could not find it. I was almost captured by a stinky swamp creature who tried to bite my buttocks and cover me in a slimy sauce to eat for his pudding.
He turned to the Mummalump and said, "Thank you, my friend," and bowed, and the half-eared cat and Amble did the same. The Mummalump nodded his hooded head wordlessly, and Amble stared sternly at Timmy. "When we enter the swamp, beware of anything which moves, talks, or has eyes, Timmy Sprottle. And whatever you do, do not eat anything which looks like chocolate, because it won't be." The Mummalump bent down beside him and said kindly, "Do not be afraid, Timmy Sprottle," which Timmy was pretty sure meant that everything was about to get a whole lot worse. He clung on miserably to the half-eared cat's fur as they bade the Mummalump farewell, and the half-eared cat shouted, "Hold tight!" as she began to gallop to keep up with Amble. Mummalump dived into the bubbling pond, emerging seconds later as he arched through the air, then dived back down under the surface and disappeared. The green light of the glowworms lit their way as they galloped on towards the hidden path, which would carry them safely through the Swamp of Doom, and Albert flew ahead with the lights of his spaceship switched to very, very low. Timmy hung on unhappily, wishing that he was still in bed watching snowflakes fall outside his bedroom window. He had no idea how he was going to beat Evil Eddie and get Teddy Mouse back. But when he thought of all the miserable creatures being forced to wear underpants with Evil Eddie's name on and being bullied forever, he knew he had to try. He heard the glowworms begin to hum to each other above his head.
Timmy Sprottle's frightened. His spirits start to sink. But he has to fight, for here we are, or here we are will stink. He wishes he was home in bed, a wish that we can't grant, 'cause he must fight and save us all from Eddie's underpants.
As they left the waterhole behind them, the ground became more and more sodden, and they didn't stop until they stood on the top of a huge hill looking down at a massive swamp, and in the distance Timmy could just make out the shape of a dark castle sat on top of a huge jagged cliff face. Amble suddenly shouted, "There it is!" and pointed towards a narrow sandy path, wending its way through the dark waters of the swamp, and then they began to run. The cat galloped down the hill after Amble, who was moving so quickly the few leaves he had left seemed in danger of being blown off, and the bugs had to cling on to avoid being blown away in the slipstream. As they reached the path, their feet splashed through the murky water, which lapped up over the sides from the swamp, and Timmy realised why they had been in such a hurry. The hidden path looked as though it was thinking about hiding itself again, and could disappear at any minute. Albert flew on ahead to check out the route, and Amble shouted, "Remember, whatever you do, do not leave the path." And Timmy stared at the stinking water, wondering why he would ever want to, when the water at the side of the path suddenly erupted, and the Mummalump's purple head shot out. He called, "Hide, quickly! Hergilda is on her way!" then disappeared again beneath the surface. Amble suddenly froze like a statue and pointed a twiggy finger behind them, shutting his eyes so that he looked as dead as the trees around him. And Timmy turned slowly to look where Amble's finger was pointing. His eyes grew wide at the sight of a huge toad, the size of a garden shed, paddling towards them on a lily leaf. Her bulgy yellow eyes stared straight at them, and her mouth formed into a huge toothy grin, as buzzing pink and white marshmallow bugs flew around her head and swarmed towards them. The toad smacked her lips together and croaked.
Yummy, 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 yummy.
Midnight again, just got your text. I miss you 'cause the faces hit me on my neck. You never seemed so eager. You're still a thing. You think I'm not the one, 'cause you haven't heard me sing.